Hi, everyone. Welcome to my capstone presentation. The title of my capstone is History as a Bridge to a Brighter Tomorrow, Democracy in the Social Studies Classroom. Um, thank you guys so much for being willing to be evaluators on this and sit here and listen to me. Hopefully not ramble because I do have a script. So um, thank you for your patience and for your attention today. And we'll try to get through this. And hopefully, if you guys have any questions, we'll get to talk about those in the Q&A session. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so just another opportunity here to to welcome you guys. Thank you again for participating in this, taking time out of the day to watch this and to read my pedagogy and lit review. Um, Means a lot that you guys specifically are involved in this because you have been instrumental in informing who I am as a teacher, and I can't thank you enough about that. Um, so, just really quickly, I'll do a an introduction of what made me want to be a teacher, and what's kind of formed me as a beginning teacher. Um, to begin with, my father was actually a teacher for several years in the middle school that I taught at this past year. He taught seventh grade science, and he taught for many years, and really was he was the star teacher uh, a couple years back, and it's kind of rare for a middle school teacher to do that because you take the SAT in in high school, the latest part of high school. So someone remembered him from that far back and uh, and and thought to choose him as their star teacher. Um, so that made a huge impression on me, just watching him be the teacher and the leader that he has been um, all these years, and seeing the man that he was for the young men in the school building, and the role model that he was to them, was something that really made me want to aspire to be something like that. So to begin with, I just started subbing uh, because I needed a job. I was out of college, and I was tired of using my my body to uh, using my strength, I guess, to earn money. I was doing a lot of difficult physical jobs, and I wanted to use my brain. So I thought maybe I'd try to sub, so maybe I could be a teacher like my dad someday and just see if it's something that I liked. And subbing has its ups and downs, as you guys know. um, it's definitely a difficult job, because you don't really have control over a lot of things. But the things that you do have control over, you have an opportunity to see something pretty special. Um, and for me, that was coming back in uh, to the same groups of kids in the same grade level or in the same school, and them remembering who I was. Oh, there's Mr. Hamner. Are you our sub today? Are you our sub today? I hope you are. Um, and that was kind of a hook. I was like, I want more of that. I want kids to look forward to seeing me. I want to look forward to seeing them, and and that really just kind of lit a fire under my desire to be a teacher. So that was a big thing. And also during this time, my wife, about 5 years ago, started teaching at this same middle school uh, with my dad. She teaches eighth grade English, and she taught upstairs from him. So they worked together for a little while, in the same school building. And I would see her when I would come in and sub, and then she would have all these stories about things that happened. Um, and she had a really difficult first year, but she overcame it, and those kids um, are now graduating high school this year, and it's been crazy to see that the transformation to these kids who are one kid in particular I remember who threw a desk across the room. We all hear stories about things like that happening, but it actually happened in her classroom, and I was a little bit concerned because these kids are, you know, eighth graders are actually kind of big. And She really made a relationship with that student and got invited to graduation by that student. So that's something that's a huge thing. And beyond building those relationships, she's always full of new ideas and has like a thirst to be a better teacher every year, and every chance she gets, she tries to improve on her craft. And that's something that I saw, and I was like, wow, she is very good at this, but she still wants to be better, and she wants to keep getting better. And that's definitely something that I wanted. Um, so that was when I started my search to become certified. And then luckily I found Piedmont. So then in Piedmont, I I've really learned a lot. So in subbing, you have a certain degree of classroom management, but you're just trying to get through the day, honestly. So that was my level of classroom management, was getting through the day. So that's where I was, and now I have so much more um, ability to control the room, because just from doing the research and learning from you guys, and Dr. Angela Brown had for classroom management, and that was something that was a huge thing. And Dr. Clinton, I actually ended up being a sped teacher this past year. I was teaching math sped, um, and I really benefited from what I learned in exceptional children, the exceptional children class, and I would have been completely lost to start out with, going cold into a sped position. Um, I would have been, I was pretty scared to begin with, but going in without any of the knowledge that I learned in your class would have been definitely not fun. Um, so I learned a lot from my first, several classes at Piedmont. Just kind of getting immersed in the language of teaching and the acronyms and all those things. Um, and those are great things, but I really still didn't feel the tug of, like, this is you, this is what you're doing, this is where you belong. um, until I started teaching in a social studies classroom. I did a little bit of co-teaching in a social studies classroom, in a seventh grade social studies classroom, and the first time I set foot in that classroom and was allowed to teach the class and teach the lesson, um, it was like lightning in a bottle. It was the intersection of my knowledge in undergrad, which is pretty extensive. I went to UGA and learned a lot about history and historiography and um, civics and social studies. So I really had a real wealth of knowledge that I really hadn't tapped into while teaching before. And this was kind of like the intersection of, you know, the skills that I learned from you guys, from y'all, my passion for history and for social studies. So it really just kind of collided all in one moment, and that was when I knew. That was when, okay, I'm ready to go now. This is where I belong, and this is gonna be where I'm gonna try to be for a long time now. So that I have you guys to thank for, because like I said, I would not I would not have been able to hold the class's attention and keep them from, talking and cutting up long enough to, you know share my knowledge with them and share my social studies and history facts with them, if I hadn't been able to contain them, essentially. So thank you guys for that so much. um, so without further ado, without further talking about myself, let's get into my capstone. So my idea was, with democracy in the classroom, what does that look like? What does that need to be uh, in the classroom? So I started this off with the classroom should be a place of, and then I outlined it that way. So the classroom should be a place of acceptance. Um, we should strive to teach students um, like the important and essential members of society that they already are. Um, so acceptance means meeting them where they are and being okay with that, because um, they do have their own knowledge already, and they have something to bring to the table. They have a lot to bring to the table, actually, and there are many instances where you can actually learn from your students, and that is um, something that I want to keep at the forefront going forward as a teacher. Um, the classroom should be a place of respect. Um, this is similar, but it respects students as contributing members of the classroom, and they will surprise you with their maturity and kindness. Um, so this one, you want to respect them and receive in order to receive that respect in turn. And if you give them, um, if you trust them with much, much will come back to you. And that's something that I want to to bring to my classroom, is to always be respectful of my students, respectful of their time, respectful of what I'm bringing to the lesson. I don't want to um, waste their day with a lesson that doesn't really speak to them, and that doesn't really benefit them anything. So that's something I want to respect my students um, first and foremost. So compromise. Compromise is another very important part. One of the most important parts of what a classroom should be like. So a classroom should be a place of compromise. Uh, there is room for both student choice and teacher leadership in the classroom, and in fact, both are essential. We want our students to be able to make decisions and have free will in the classroom, and do their own thing and feel free to do that. Um, but there comes a point when you have to step in and facilitate that. So um, teacher leadership is something that is also, equally important um, to have. So you can have democracy and freedom in the classroom and have student choice, but if you just have a free for all, um, the students are not going to respond well to that. They're gonna think you don't have control of the classroom. They're going to think that you don't know what you're doing, um, and they're going to be right, because you don't know what you're doing and you don't have control of the classroom. You are just it seems like you're trying to do something high-minded and lofty ideals, but really it's almost lazy to just let them loose and just say, okay, you can do whatever you want, here's how it has to be. um, this is what I'm looking for, just have at it. But really, if you spend more time and structure those choices and say it can look like this, or it can look like this, or it can look like this, or you can tell me what you think it would look like, and we can talk through that and make that work. But just leaving students to their own devices is not something that I want to do in my classroom. So compromise of student choice and teacher leadership is something that's very important. Um, Justice. Now, this one seems kind of strange, um, but I think that the classroom should be a place of justice. Um, During COVID, we've had a lot of learning to do. We've learned a lot um, about how to do online classwork, and how to be an online teacher, and how to reach those kids and those parents. Um, and we have built a system over those couple weeks, several weeks, where everybody is mostly equal, except for the fact that some kids don't have internet access. um, but we reach out to each kid every day, and make sure that they're aware of what's going on, and that's something that we don't really do in the classroom. We have a system that is biased towards certain students, and against certain other students, um, and that's not something that is acceptable. And um, with the societal unrest that we've had this past month or so, with George Floyd and everything else that's going on, um, there's a movement going, and there's an opportunity to rebuild um, the system to be more just, to be more um, equitable, and to build the system better and stronger, and without the inherent biases that were there built in from the get-go. I think we are so much we're very far from Jim Crow, and from just outright racism and those kind of things. But the bottom line is that we're not as far away as we think, and there are still some things built into the system by people who were racist, and who um, did a lot of work to marginalize certain citizens of the United States, and we have an opportunity to fix some of that. And so I don't need to stay on this one for too long, but that one is going to be a very important one to me, is to make sure that each of my students feels represented, each of them feels heard, and um, that they have equal access to anything that they need, any help, any resources. I want to get that in their hands. I want them to be um, just like any other student. So that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. So I want that one's really, honestly, is a very big one. Okay. Again, this is I keep saying that these are really important, but this one is a huge one. Um, this this day and time, it's the age of social media, and people have the ability to post things and say things without being fact checked, and without having even not even fact, but sound reasoning behind what they're saying. So people are able to comment on things like on Facebook and social and other social media without being checked at all, without having, you know, a scholarly source to back it up, or, you know, being able to explain themselves. And you follow the people that you agree with, and you have confirmation bias, and you have all this stuff that feeds into each other. So now more than ever, uh, we need a generation of students that can see that kind of thing and say, okay, that's someone's opinion. I don't need to listen to that because they don't have anything. They don't have any sound reasoning behind it. They don't have any fact um, behind that. So I want my students to be able to look at that and say, okay, you know, this is not a scholarly source. This is also not a this is completely biased and full of this person's opinion, and I don't need to I don't need to listen to this because it is not something that is true. So we need students who can argue and who can debate these things and be and have sound logic and reasoning behind that. So that's very important. Another thing is compassion, and I think we all, of course, any teacher has compassions for their students. Um, but in this case, I'm specifically speaking about the students who have experienced trauma in their life. And there are several, you know, there are many more students than we would like. We would like for none of our students to have experienced trauma, but many of our students have experienced more trauma in their young lives than some adults do in their whole life. Um, and it's our responsibility to make sure that they don't have to relive that trauma um, needlessly. Um, so what I mean by this is to say, when you're going to be talking about um, any kind of racial violence, any kind of gender discrimination, any literature that has anything that might cause trauma to a student in what you're reading or what you're studying about, um, there needs to be a discussion about that beforehand, and there needs to be an understanding that, okay, we're not going to have any negative comments about this. We need to all be mature, and you need to be considerate of those of us who may have experienced something like this. And I know that many teachers do this to begin with. Many teachers, you know, already do this, but this is something that I really want to make sure that is included in um, my way of teaching, is to anytime there's going to be a very serious discussion, we need to talk about it beforehand. There needs to be like a preface to what we're talking about. Okay, so then the next one, experience. There are tons of teachers around um, who have been teaching longer than I've been alive, and that's the fact of the matter. Uh, they've been, you know, they might be close to retirement, but they've been teaching for a long time, and it would be very silly for me to not take advantage of that knowledge and experience. There are so many teacher stories um, of situations that I never thought that I would have to deal with, and then sure enough, I had to deal with that situation. But I had prior knowledge of how someone else handled that and how that either worked or didn't work for them, and I was able to, you know, shift my actions accordingly. And that's something that you know, I really want to use as sort of my professional learning, is to be intentional about asking about those stories, and really listening, and asking other teachers what they did in certain other situations. Because why make the same mistakes they did? If they are willing and ready to share the information that they gained from the way they did things, why would I not listen to them? That's free. It's free. So um, sometimes you just have to ask, listen. A lot of times you don't have to ask. They'll tell you what they think most of the time. So just, the classroom should be a place of experience. The teacher should be experienced, even if they're not. I have no illusions that I am a veteran teacher, or I have it all figured out, and that's not fair to my students. So um, I need to work to rectify that situation, that disparity of an inexperienced young teacher to a seasoned veteran teacher. I need to try to work and fill that gap, um, so that my students are receiving the best instruction that they can. All right, so student choice. This one is very central to the democracy part of my capstone. We have to get through all the information. We have to get through the standards. We've got to do all the assignments, take all the tests, and all those things. But can't we do this without um, crushing those kids' individuality? Um, I think we can. I think we can do it without. I think we can get through all the things, but also give them a little bit of choice. So if you have a standard, um, you can kind of break that down to what it needs, what they need to be able to do, and give them some choices. So that's something that it requires. It requires a lot more work from the teacher to grade several different um, assignments for one assignment. You're giving them choices for different things, but you have to grade. If everybody chooses something different, you have to grade several different things. So that's a little more work, but it allows that student's voice to come through. um, and that's something that, if we don't have the student voice, and they don't feel like they're being heard, and then their work is valued, I just don't see that. I don't see them investing in it. If they don't feel like anybody's going to care what they have to say, um, then why even produce it? So I want to make sure that it's something that um, of course they probably don't want to do an assignment, but if they have to do an assignment, that it's something close to what they are passionate about. So um, or even where their talents lie. So if something is not your strength, like if you're not good at making PowerPoints, then I'll have another choice for you to do. Do something handwritten, or make a poster or something like that. So um, it's all about that student choice. Um, Trying to give students as many choices in the classroom as possible, even when it comes to the classroom itself. Setting up the classroom. Do you guys want chairs or desks? You know, you know, how do we want to organize things? Where do we want to put things that's going to be um, most accessible to y'all? And how do we organize ourselves? Like how are we, and especially in a social studies class, how are we voting? How are we making decisions as a class? How do we do discussions? Those are all things that I think you can lay down some of those ground rules with your students, and they'll have more ownership over um, the classroom and those assignments. So that's something that I want to incorporate also. Public power. This one again is it seems like it's not really a school thing. It's more of a society thing. But uh, as you guys know, classroom is kind of a microcosm of society. So um, I think public power is something that's very important in society and very important in the classroom as well. Um, our classroom should be a place for students to practice voicing those opinions and concerns um, calmly and without fear of someone, shutting them down and saying, no, that's, you're going to the office or whatever. um, so when you're making those decisions and trying to figure out how we want to set up our classroom, how we want to, organize ourselves, um, that should be an opportunity for them to become those um, those little activist, members of our democracy. They should be able to speak without fear of someone else, getting onto them or um, saying that's stupid or anything like that. So um, it needs to be clear to them that they have a say in the classroom. Of course, you have to teach, you have to get through things, but they need to know that they have a say in what goes on. Um, Critical thinking is another thing that's very important for students going forward. Um, they are going to really need to be able to critically think of anything in life. You need to be able to weigh your options on many things. You need to be able to say, okay, this is good, this is not. Um, to be critical of things that go on around you. Um, so running the classroom is in itself a an exercise in critical thinking for the students and the teacher. How can we do this better? Really critiquing everything that you do, and unfortunately for the teacher, that involves changing things mid-year and trying to constantly trying to make things better. Um, and constantly hearing criticism also, why are we doing this? We could be doing something like this. And that's also something that it's important to give them those reasoning skills that we talked about earlier, so that they can calmly and respectfully debate what they're being critical of. So um, when it comes to classroom decisions and classroom governance, how we organize ourselves, um, they need to be able to think critically of whatever the system that is in place, um, so that they can make it better, and that we can make it better together. Um, and now these are some pictures of the examples. So for student choice and public power, uh, my students were um, complaining about the uh, the harsh fluorescent lights in the classroom. So we talked about it. We talked about, okay, so we don't have any windows. Um, we only have the window right above the door, and that doesn't face outside. So we don't have any other light in here. How are we gonna light the classroom so you guys can see? And how much light do you guys need to see? So we got to talk about these things, and we've got to come to a decision. And so we came to the decision that we would do lamps and string lights. Um, and I had a certain amount of money that I was willing to chip in, and we agreed to use money from the snack cart outside to fund these things, and got approval through the principal and those kind of things. And we, they used their voices to make a change in their classroom. And I hate the fluorescent lights too. So it was not a hard choice for me, and it was not something that I was not on board with. So um and that's different. So they can still read, they can still see, and as often as we use the smart board, they can see that better because it's a little dimmer, and they also can um be more comfortable in my classroom, and I could be more comfortable in my classroom. And the first thing that people say about how dim it is okay, they're going to sleep. They're going to go straight to sleep because it's so dim in there. But that was part of our agreement. If we set up, you know, we set up an agreement about, okay, if we do this, we've got to have harsher punishments for sleeping in class because you guys are going to get really sleepy, and so you need a motivation not to do that. And they agreed. uh, they proposed, one unredeemable mark in your agenda, which means that you don't get to go to Friday lunch reward. um, so they elected themselves to not um, to not have uh, a reward. So they agreed on a punishment themselves. So that's something that was a big push for me. I was like, wow, they can even come up with their own punishments. So that's something that was a surprise to me. But it's very cool to watch them be little citizens. It's very nice. Um, and then this is student choice within assignments. So this one is immigration it's an immigration unit project. So they have the ability to, so they're supposed to do tic-tac-toe. So you do one, two, three, or one, two, three down the side or in the middle. And you have all these options. You could discuss, what there's a suitcase activity with a partner. You discuss what you would bring in your suitcase to America. And then there's several other different options that cover the same information just differently, and you have choices on how to do it, and it's more fun that way. I also, let me go to the next one so this is out of the way. um, I also want to do current events in my social studies classroom, and this was a neat way to do that and have kind of choice with doing that. So the free choice here, I thought was very interesting. Um, Current events in your life, that's something that's neat. And then you of course you have to, you bring it to the teacher beforehand, um, and say, this is what it is. And then the kids share. They share the ones they want to do. Um, and it's again a tic-tac-toe or a bingo. um, and I thought it would be cool to do a different one of these every 3 or 4 weeks. um, and just interchange just the different options, to do different things. And of course, this builds on the student strength and the students' choices, um, and it's fun. So this is something that I would want to incorporate for a student choice. These are just some examples of how I would do that in the classroom. And again, you have to grade different things, but really, when it's interesting to the student, it's more interesting to you, and it's a lot more, it's a lot less monotonous and boring that way to just grade, you know, ticket out the door after ticket out the door, or bell ringer after bell ringer, or however would position these things, or paper after paper. These are all different ways of doing the same sort of assignment. So that's something that is going to be, I think, is going to be fun. Um, Again, I just want to thank you guys so much for everything that y'all have taught me, and for everything I've learned at Piedmont, and allowing me to be in a cohort of other young teachers, has been a huge thing to learn from my peers, and to have discussions about, man, I had a really rough day today, you know and then someone talk through it with you when you're waiting on class to start. And so it's like a support group almost. And I didn't have that. I would not have had that if it wasn't for Piedmont, I don't think. Um, and I've learned so much um, that has made me the teacher that I am. And I think that I think that's a credit to you guys. And I hope that I will make you all proud, and that I will be a credit to you guys as well. That people will see me and think, "Oh, he went to Piedmont. You know, Piedmont must be a good school." Um, and I hope that I can be that for you guys. And again, if you have any questions, um, let me know, and we will talk them through in the Q&A session. And I look forward to seeing you guys, even if it's just the little boxes on the screen. But thank you so much. I'm really thankful for the consistent dedication to clarity and relevance that I've seen in my professors and you guys. Every class I've had has been relevant and has been useful to me as an educator, and that's something that's something that you can't say in a lot of programs. I think I think you probably learn things that are not helpful in a lot of places, and I'm thankful that I don't have to deal with that. So um, thank you guys so much. Um, Anxious to hear your comments and your questions.